there's always a choice in life. You choose the negative side or the positive side. And if you search for negativity, it's going to find you. And I feel the same with positivity. If you put that out in the world, then it's going to find you as well.
Welcome to Priorities, the podcast about the things in life that really matter. I'm your host, journalist and coach Lily Silverton. And each week I'll be asking a new interviewee to open up about the things that are important and unimportant to them. What takes first place in their life, what they couldn't care less about, and what they'd like to work on a little bit more. Will you agree with their priorities? Will they make you reevaluate your own? Let's find out. My guest today is principal dancer with the Royal Ballet, Stephen McRae. Stephen is one of the dance world's most critically acclaimed performers, known for both his ballet and tap expertise. Awarded Best Male Dancer at the Critics Circle Dance Awards in 2011, Stephen performs lead roles in both classical and contemporary repertory at his home away from home, the Royal Opera House in London. When he's not on stage, you might find him on your screen, most recently playing Skimbleshanks in the film adaptation of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cats. As one of the best male ballet dancers in the world, Stephen's job is, for most of us, incomprehensibly physically demanding. However, as you'll soon hear, it's his mental strength and flexibility that really gives him his unique and inspiring edge. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's such an honor to have you on here. I think the last time we spoke was maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I interviewed you for the Royal Opera House magazine. So I'm sure a lot has changed and I'm really looking forward to having a chat. The first thing I wanted to ask you is, how are you feeling right now at this minute? Where are you at on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, okay. To put a number on it. If I'm really, really honest, we have to have such a perspective on life, and I'm beyond incredibly lucky. My wife and I are fine. Our 3 children are all healthy and happy. We're in pure lockdown. We're not interacting in any way, so we are. I think we're as healthy and as safe as we possibly can be. Of course, we want to see our friends and our family and things like that, and of course, eager to get back to work and to get performing again. But realistically, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think we're up there close to number 10. We're making the most of this situation, and it's a unique situation. And it's time with the children that we're very fortunate to have. Not many people get this intense time with their children, balancing work and life and careers. And, you feel like sometimes you're an accessory to your own life. So we're very fortunate to be in this particular circumstance. Of course, people are going through the most awful hell time. So we're very, very fortunate.
Indeed, we are. Yeah, I feel the same way being with my little toddler, although she's pretty tiring at the moment. So that was your first priority that you sent over to me. Was your first priority of your life, the area that you prioritize, is your children, your wife, and the life that you've created?
Yeah, it's obviously the first thing I think of as soon as I wake up in the morning is the children. And that's either because I've woken up and I've thought about them, or they have woken us up. So, and with children, particularly young children, the second they wake up, it's 100 miles an hour from the second they open their eyes. That's go, 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 go. And to be honest, I've always wanted children. I've always dreamt of having my own family. And that's my pure focus. That's my number one focus is, my children and my little family.
And you have 3 children now?
Yes. So we have Audrey, who's 5, Frederick is 3, and Rupert is 8.5 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of energy in this house. And I think obviously the lockdown just magnifies those energy levels.
Do you think you've always been someone with a lot of energy? Obviously your job demands a lot.
Yeah, I feel like I'm, I guess, naturally a very energetic person. maybe I'm an all or nothing kind of person. I seem to go, and then crash, and then go, and crash. But I think that's sort of been from a young age as well. I think I was always told as a kid by my parents, if you're going to do something, do it properly. So I think I've tried to just always live by that rule. Like, if you're not going to actually really put the effort in and do it properly, then don't bother.
Do you find it hard to balance your very demanding, all-encompassing job with a family? I know your wife is a Royal Ballet soloist as well, Elizabeth Harrod.
Yeah, it's, our job is not your typical 9 to 5. We still get asked ridiculous questions sometimes by people. They say, "What do you do during the day?" And obviously, a lot of people don't actually understand that our profession, it's quite normal to do a 12-hour day. So we start class at 10:30 in the morning, rehearse all the way through till 5:30 if there's a performance, and then we'll have the performance at 7:30, which goes till 10:30 at night. So a 12-hour day is very common for most of the dancers in the company. So to juggle that kind of workload with having a family can obviously be near impossible sometimes. I'm very fortunate, as I'm a principal dancer, so I don't perform every single night. And my schedule, it varies. So I can be rehearsing all day without a break. And then the next day, maybe I have 2 rehearsals. So I'm home much earlier in time for the school pickup and things like that. My wife obviously has given birth 3 times in the last 5 years. So she's been on and off stage each time as well. And she's making her way back now after the number 3, which, to be honest, is beyond supernatural, to be honest. I think for anyone to return to work after number 3 is an incredible accomplishment, but to do the job that she does, which is obviously physical and all about your body and how you can move and function, is truly remarkable. So within that time of her being on and off stage and maternity leave and things like that, I have actually, unfortunately, had a number of injuries that have built up over the years. And spinning it into a positive, luckily, a lot of my injuries have coincided with her going back to work and things like that. So particularly in the last 18 months, we've been able to juggle a lot of our work schedule together. And actually been fortunate to have a lot of time with the children because my rehab schedule, I can adapt it around when I need to go in. And also with Lizzie returning from maternity leave, she can also adapt it. So, sometimes I do the mornings, she does the afternoon, or vice versa. And we've kind of carried that on into lockdown mode as well, to be honest.
Yeah, we've done a similar thing in my family as well, splitting up the days.
Yeah, I think obviously our eldest is at school. She's only in reception, of course. So, there's no pressure whatsoever to be handing in work every single day. But for the children, they benefit from a bit of a schedule, and obviously they will return to school at some point. So you don't want that to be such a shock to their system as well. So we've tried to just keep, a bit of a casual routine going on at home. So I usually take the role of teacher in the morning and do the homeschooling. And my wife goes upstairs and does her workout and her training to get back on stage. And then in the afternoon, we all have lunch together. And then in the afternoon, we swap over, and Mama takes over and does all the activities and things. And I go upstairs and do my rehab plan, which twice a week I log on with my sports coach and my physio at the Royal Opera House. And we do it all through Zoom and, like weekly checkups and seeing my progress.
Wow. And do the kids have a ballet class incorporated into that?
No. They, we do a bit of everything with them, to be honest. They do all their academics, and then we try and just have fun with them, whether it's a bit of yoga or tennis in the garden. When I say tennis in the garden, I mean like 2 little plastic rackets we've got a very small garden, but we make the most of it. Or if it's, a quick tap lesson, which children being children, that lasts 5 minutes, of course. And, they're just into everything. If you say, come on, let's go and do archery, then they'll be so excited. And yeah, let's do archery. That's the best thing ever. And then if you go and say to them, right, let's go and, make a mud pie out of dirt, they'll say, yeah, that's the best idea. So they're at that wonderful age that, you can just have fun, really.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. So you are in the process of recovery right now.
Mm-hmm.
How's that going?
It's the most remarkable thing, I think. Dancers, of course, they shudder when you say the word injury, of course, like any sports person, any athlete, any musician, really, anybody who uses their body as their instrument or their tool. Of course, injury is always seen as the enemy. But when your profession demands so much of you, we're performing and working and pushing our bodies 6 days a week, sometimes 12 hours a day. It's inevitable that your body is going to have to stop at some point and say, "Ooh, I wasn't designed to do this." So thankfully, there's a lot of sports science going into the world of dance now, and we're starting to learn a little bit more and trying to catch up with the sports world. And, we share a lot of research and science with a lot of the football clubs, and our surgeons are all the same and things like that. So, of course, when you have an injury, you can focus on the negative and think, "Oh my goodness, like this is terrible." And, I'm missing out on my performances and other people are doing my shows, and you feel bad because they have to do more work, and you also feel angry because you don't want to be missing out on your own shows. But you can also flip it and look at the positives in each situation. And, last October, I stepped on stage. I'd had to have 3 surgeries in, what was it? It was 12 months. I'd had 3 surgeries. To try and correct something down in my Achilles region. And each time I got back on stage and, filmed Cats, the Hollywood film, and all this sort of stuff. So I was never off stage for a huge period of time. I was fine to get back on and off stage. So in October last year, I was stepping back on stage, having had the 3 surgeries and worked through the summer to get back on stage. And halfway through that performance, my Achilles snapped in front of the whole audience. And nobody could have predicted it. I'd had a scan 10 days before, and my Achilles looked healthy, and there was no sign of deterioration or anything. So there were no obvious warnings. I did have pain before the performance. I knew that, but the scans were clear. So when it snapped, it was beyond shock. To be honest, I think. My sports psychologist has actually talked about it being as a trauma, and it was a trauma. Yeah. It happened in front of 2,500 people with the whole orchestra playing, and I couldn't do anything. I just had to stand there because I literally didn't have a leg to stand on, hobbling on one. But of course, you're well looked after when you work for an organization like that. And 20 minutes after coming off stage, I already had a plan in place. The surgeon was informing everybody of what to do, and you then just have to focus on the positives. What can I do in this situation to gain something out of it, and to learn, to develop, to grow? And that's been my intention. It's been 6 months now, and I'm learning every single day more and more about the body, about my mental health, able to watch my children much more because I'm around them a little bit more. I finished a master's degree as well during that time. So that was
how casual.
Timing. Sorry?
How casual of you.
But yeah, I had a nice moment a few weeks ago seeing some surgical images, and it was a nice realization to see how far I have come in the 6 months. Because of course, when you're living with this, I can't just say, "Oh, I'm focusing on my Achilles for 1 hour a day." I live with it 24 hours a day. I'm constantly aware of it because it's obviously still not 100%. It's only been 6 months, and they had to reconstruct the whole thing. So seeing the images from the surgery made me realize, okay, you've actually accomplished a lot in 6 months. And I know there's a huge journey ahead of me. But the surgery and the injury and everything, as I said, nobody wants that to happen, but there's always a choice in life. You choose the negative side or the positive side. And, if you search for negativity, it's going to find you. And I feel the same with positivity. If you put that out in the world, then it's going to find you as well. So I've just tried to maintain that positive approach to it. And, some days are easier to do that than others, of course. But having my 3 little children, and obviously my wife, who's the most supportive person on the planet around, does make it a little bit easier.
Well, your mental resilience is really inspiring to hear. I think anyone after repetitive surgeries like that, and then what you say is a trauma, of course it was a trauma to go through, to still come out of that and keep going, just keep moving through it. And what you say about negative and positive is so true. I say this when I work with clients all the time, that although you don't want to ignore negative feelings, of course not, but the more that you say something is bad or is painful or difficult over and over to yourself again, it becomes a bit like a mantra, and it becomes more and more true to you. And as you say, the more that you look on the positive side, the more that the positive stuff does come.
Exactly. I totally agree with you there.
I was looking on your Instagram earlier and found this great thing that you wrote about your process of recovery. And you said that it's just repetition of ordinary movements, which anyone who's been through an injury knows that. And I'm sure that most people who are, don't professionally use their body like you are probably useless at listening to their physiotherapist like me. But you said that you would watch paint dry if that's what you had to do to get you back on stage.
Yeah, I think anyone who's had to go through an intense physio period of time, and this particular injury, obviously with my Achilles being reconstructed, I had to learn how to just stand again, learn how to walk, learn how to go up the stairs, simple things like that, like even putting a shoe on for the first time months and months after the surgery was, without sounding dramatic, it was a traumatic experience because it was so uncomfortable and painful just to slide the shoe on. But those kind of procedures and recoveries require routine. They require exercises that retrain your brain basically to send all these messages back to the joint or the tendon that's been recovered or healed, and to say to it, it's okay, this is what you're meant to be feeling. And, it can be really frustrating when certain things like my calf, for example, obviously just switched off completely. And I, for the life of me, just could not get it to respond. And this was, weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and months, even months of just repeat. And then eventually you start to feel the slightest sensation. And much of the rehab process, unfortunately, for an injury like an Achilles rupture is repetition. So it can be very boring or very mundane and not the most motivational or inspiring set of exercises that you need to do on a very regular basis. But as I mentioned, if the doctors and the physios and the sports scientists, if they literally said you have to stare at a wall and watch the paint dry for the next 6 months to get back on stage, then that's what I would do. So I'm trying to just follow their guide like gospel, I guess, and but also listen to my own body as well, and allow my body to guide my way through it. So if there's a particular day that I feel like I'm fighting against it, I then just have to step away that day. And it's not like accepting defeat. It's having the intelligence to just separate yourself from how you're feeling at that time so that tomorrow you can then benefit from your next session. Whereas if you just keep on bashing yourself into the ground, you're just digging a bigger hole, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that innate listening, isn't it, of the body and the mind?
Yeah, and anybody out there listening who is naturally driven or motivated, I think it becomes normal to stop listening to your own body or mind, because you always have in your head that, oh, that's you just being lazy, or that's you being weak that day. Like, you've got to ignore that, push through it, get over it. And I think anybody who is motivated can understand what I'm saying there. And it's really important. I think it comes with maturity to be able to acknowledge that it's not a sign of weakness or laziness. It's just, as I said earlier, it's just an additional level of awareness, really, of your own body and your mental health.
And as you said earlier, the body can't work at full speed all the time.
as well.
No, and most athletes follow a regime that allows them to peak, and then they have their moments where they can come down a bit from that, and then they peak again. Even footballers, they'll have their match, and then they have a quieter day, and then they have a training day, and a quieter day, and then a match. That just doesn't exist in our world. We can be at full flight, 10:30 at night, flying across the Royal Opera House stage, and 12 hours later, we're back in the studio going again. 12 hours is not a long time to recover from a marathon. It's like doing a marathon every single day, 6 days a week. So, dancers have to learn how to squeeze in recovery when they can. Of course, when you have 3 children at home, the amount of sleep and recovery reduces. But then you get injections of energy in other ways from your children, and you get I think a more broad perspective on life as well. I used to really beat myself up after shows because silly things didn't go the way I wanted them to go. And now, of course, I come home and, sometimes one of my children will be awake at midnight because they need a bottle or something. And you quickly just switch your mind into a different world, and you go, okay, I did my best I possibly could at that moment on stage. Of course, I always want to do things better than I did, but that was that. And this is life now. This is actual real life. This is a human who needs me. And you quickly get over the fact that you didn't do a pirouette the way you wanted to, or something really minor like that.
I remember coming for my tour around the Royal Opera House and seeing the shoes that the dancers use, and you talked about how it's doing a marathon with every performance, and how they needed, for Swan Lake, they needed a couple of pairs of shoes because they'd wear through them, which I thought was staggering.
Yeah, the ballerinas, the ballerinas, the girls obviously go up onto their toes, so they have point shoes. Most of them, sounds barbaric, most of them are made with like paper mache basically, and that's how it's made hard. Some of the newer shoes have different materials inside, but many of the ballerinas, Swan Lake is 4 acts, and the lead swan, for example, she appears in Act 2, 3, and 4. She might use a different pair of shoes for each act because they just give way, and their feet are obviously super strong, and what they're doing on their feet is obviously not what the human body is designed to do. So, it's not unheard of for a ballerina to go through a pair of shoes each act.
Staggering. So that brings us pretty well onto your second priority, which was pushing yourself to further your own capabilities, both on and off stage.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. I'm just always intrigued to try and, without sounding too simple, but to better myself. And whether that's stretching myself further, academically, artistically, just simply as a human. I'm learning every minute of the day as a father. It doesn't matter how many books you read on parenting, nothing prepares you for becoming a parent. And so it's a constant learning curve. And that's something I think that obviously continues to happen till the day you die in all walks of life. And I am just uber aware of wanting to, expose myself to as many things as I can, and push myself. So whether that's physically getting stronger so that I'm able to, tackle things with a different approach at work, then that's what that is. Whether it's exposing myself to certain literature or whatever, so that, it might spark something artistically off in me. Interests that inspire me, my motorsport, I still love motorsport, and I do get a lot of inspiration from that and from stories that have happened behind the scenes with all of that. And then, back to my family. So I don't know. I think it all links back to my parents, how they said to me, if you're going to do something, do it properly. And I like that mentality. And I try to sort of say that to my children as well when they're doing their schoolwork or anything, to be honest. Like, don't just do the job half, finish the job, do it the best you can, and be proud of it. Be proud of what you're putting your energy into. No point putting all this energy into things if you're not proud of it.
How do you balance that with your health?
Yeah, the best I possibly can, I guess. My wife and I live a very balanced lifestyle in terms of our diet and things. We don't follow any fad diets. We don't cut out anything from our diet. So, we eat meat, we eat dairy products, we have our carbs, we eat all our greens. We have a glass of wine at night if we want to. We just try and live our life as, I say with the fingers in the air, a normal lifestyle. But of course, your body, it has to be treated like a car. And when I say car, I like to envisage it as a supercar. If you put rubbish into a car, it's not going to function. It needs the right fuel for that car. And your body's exactly the same, whether it's physically or mentally. If you just keep on pumping it full of rubbish, to be honest, it's not going to perform the way you want it to perform. So as much as we do have a balanced lifestyle, of course it can't be balanced and leaning towards junk food and alcohol all the time, because that's just not going to help us. But then vice versa, if you say, me particularly, if I say I'm not having something or I shouldn't have it, I want it more. So I'm better off just to have a bit of everything moderately. And I think that helps my wife and I just to try and keep as sane as possible.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Elizabeth's a nutritionist as well, isn't she?
Yeah, she's studied nutrition. So she has a very good understanding of, just how the body needs to be fueled. And, it's great, obviously, with our children. They've all got different requirements, analogy to this or an intolerance to that, which is new to my wife and I, because we both don't have any of those. We've always eaten and had everything. So her knowledge in that world has definitely been a benefit, helping our children, but also to her and I as well.
Nutrition is a priority for me, and I know that the more plants I eat, the better I feel. However, with a busy life, I, like you I'm sure, don't always manage to get my daily quota of greens. So I'm very happy that this season of Priorities is sponsored by Foga, a new brand that makes plant shakes, pre-portioned blends of freeze-dried fruit and veg that you simply shake up with water or milk to create a restaurant-standard smoothie at home. I'm not really into protein shakes or powders. However, these are genuinely amazing. They're so easy and delicious. Right now, I'm digging the ginger and greens combination, and my daughter is a big fan of berries and cinnamon. They contain 0 extra sugars or chemicals. Through freeze drying, have all the nutrients locked in, and they're whole plant, meaning they have all the fiber of fresh fruit and veg. It's really the lazy person's dream. If you're looking to easily and affordably prioritize your nourishment, then I'd love to find out if you enjoy Foga as much as I do. They're offering £5 off your first box with the code PRIORITIES. Check them out on www.foga.co. That's Foga. Thank you to Foga. I love sleep. Seriously, it's one of my biggest priorities, and I'm a different and much improved person when I get my full 8 hours. So I'm incredibly excited that this season of Priorities is sponsored by Sleep Siren, an independent lifestyle brand fueled by a passion for health, wellness, and great sleep. Sleep Siren brings together science, education, and luxurious products to offer meaningful support to busy people who could sleep a little or a lot better. As the mother of a toddler and having suffered from insomnia on and off my entire life, I know firsthand how helpful Sleep Siren can be at identifying and covering your sleep needs. Whether you're looking to read an expert article on the latest sleep science, treat yourself to some insanely soft silk pajamas, or simply find a luxurious eye mask, Sleep Siren have everything you need to sleep well tonight. If you would like to improve your sleep, I'd love for you to have the same experience as me with Sleep Siren. So they're offering 20% off with the code PRIORITY20. Check them out on www.sleepsiren.com. Thank you to Sleep Siren.
I'd love to go back to this idea of furthering your capabilities on stage, because anyone who watches you, I've watched you a number of times, would just think, how could you even further yourself in any way? You are an absolutely staggering dancer. So what does it mean for you to further your own capabilities? What does it look like for you? Because I guess from the outside, I wouldn't see how that would happen.
All right. Well, that's very kind of you. I always say to young students who, I do interviews with or things, young dancers, and they're always asking me about how to stay driven or motivated. And I always feel that a lot of society's issues at the moment are really sparked by this obsession with what everybody else is doing and comparing yourself to everybody else and all the scenarios that, are built around that. So I try to say to young dancers when they go into the studio, you need to envisage, like a dog collar when they've had something done and you have to wrap a cone around their head to stop them from biting themselves or whatever. I envisage wearing one of those. So it creates almost a tunnel vision. And you go into the studio and you focus on what you're doing. You're focusing on your mission. And, every, 10 minutes or so, you pull that visor or cone down, you have a look around the room, you get a little bit inspired by seeing what someone else is doing. Oh, I could learn a bit from that. And then you put the visor back on and you focus on your mission. Because otherwise you just spend your whole life obsessing about what everyone else is doing. And your own mission has just gone away along the seaside somewhere. So I try to think of that back to your question about my own career and trying to better myself on stage and things. I only ever compare what I have done to what I am doing at that time. Mm-hmm. So I always look at, my career and thinking, okay, that you achieved that and that and that. How could you develop that further? Where could you go from there? And there is always more to do. I think our profession being an art form, there is never, ever, ever this achievement of perfection because it just simply does not exist. And what I think is good will be the opposite of the person next to me. And that's the joy of art. But that also means that in our world, you run the tendency of never being satisfied. And that's something I've had to learn over the years. This constant striving and trying to better yourself or develop yourself is wonderful. And it's such a motivating force. But you need to occasionally you need to not even press pause or stop. You almost just have to slow the speed down a little bit to acknowledge little milestones, little landmarks of, oh, actually, I achieved that I'd set out to do. But of course, by the time you've achieved it, you've already got your eye on the next goal. So that's something I've had to learn. And I think I've gotten better at it since having children, to be honest, because I'm so much more aware of, all the achievements that they're making and all the little milestones of, oh, they crawled or they did this or they did that. Or my daughter lost her first tooth the other day. And I'm much more aware of just acknowledging, key moments in life. And I'm trying to relate that and link that back to my career as well, because, otherwise you just go back to the dressing room after every performance and you're just never, ever satisfied. And that's honestly not a nice way to live your life. You have to still acknowledge or celebrate something positive from all the work that you've done.
And when you use the car analogy, but putting good fuel in the car, both physically and mentally, and that's part of the good fuel that you need to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. And, of course, I don't think I've ever come off stage and gone, yeah, I nailed that tonight. Or, yeah, that was, amazing. I genuinely don't think I've ever come off stage and felt that way. But I have come off stage and thought, you know what, this and this and this wasn't bad. I really enjoyed that tonight. And I've gotten better at doing that because, as I mentioned earlier, you just always come off stage and be disgruntled. And then what's the point? You're pushing yourself. And, in my case, like I literally sacrificed my body for the profession. So you've got to get something out of it for yourself. You can't just be doing it for the audience all the time or for your boss or, for the choreographer. You need to get something out of it in life as well. And I think that carries on to everything for everybody across all professions.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you feel when you're dancing?
Well, my earliest childhood memory of dancing is complete freedom. I walked into the studio, a very shy little boy, and it was like this tiger was unleashed. I felt free. I felt wild. And it was just like they'd taken the reins off, and I just flew around the room. And then the hour finished, and I went and stood behind my mum again and went home. So that was my earliest childhood memory. And sometimes, when I'm flying around the Opera House stage, certain ballets give me that freedom again, that sheer adrenaline rush of power and exhilaration, and you just feel like you can fly. And it's the most wonderful moment when that happens. Of course, other ballets are so demanding technically or artistically that that freedom is not always there, but that's something that I do try and search for no matter what I'm performing. I always maintain, if I'm in the audience and I'm watching somebody perform, whether that's dance or opera or anything, if I can relax watching that person perform, that to me is an indication that, either that person's enjoying what they're doing or they have full faith in what they're doing. And I feel like that's my responsibility as a performer, to allow the audience to sit back in their chair and go along for the ride, to be honest. And when I feel free, I feel like that's me at my most empowered mode, I guess you would say, which ultimately means that the audience gets a better performance out of me.
Mm. What's your favorite ballet or dance to perform?
Oh, they're all just so unique and different. I love the dramatic ballets by Sir Kenneth Macmillan. His production of Romeo and Juliet was my first full-length ballet that I did as a principal role. And I was very young, and I still to this day don't even know how I did that. But so that is always a magical ballet to perform. And every time it comes back, like, I just dreamed that we could perform it once a week, every week, to be honest. I love performing it. And I've had a few goes now at his production of Miling. Crown Prince Rudolph is the most twisted and tormented role. And for a male dancer, it's one of the most demanding and difficult roles any man can do. So I love tackling those dramatic roles. I love the sheer brilliance of Ashton's work. He just uses such a wide vocabulary of dance steps that it's technically so demanding, and many of his ballets just come across as tongue-in-cheek, lighthearted and joyful ballets, but they're some of the most difficult ballets you'll ever perform. And a lot of the audience don't ever know that. I do enjoy the challenge that he throws or threw at the dancers. But obviously working with all the choreographers today on new works is a dream, because it's your chance to really put your own stamp on these ballets. The Royal Ballet is incredibly full and rich of the most diverse repertoire on the planet. And it's wonderful that we get to tackle these roles that we've created on, the best dancers in the world. But to have your own ballet created on you is magical. And I feel very fortunate that I've been in that position to work with so many wonderful choreographers.
My question was a little bit like asking you which one's your favorite child. We'll move on to your final priority, which was helping support and equip the next generation of dancers. So talk to us a little bit about that. Is that something you've always been aware of? Did you feel supported when you were younger?
Well, yeah, I came from a motorsport family, and my family knew nothing about dance or the arts, to be honest. It just wasn't their world. It's not that they didn't have an interest in it. It just wasn't their world. They weren't exposed to it, I guess you would say. So when I basically was thrown into this dance world, I, age 17, went to the Prix de Lausanne in Switzerland, which is a huge international competition, and the prizes offer scholarships to the best ballet schools and companies around the world. And I needed one of those scholarships. There was no way we were going to afford boarding school in London coming from Sydney. So I was very fortunate that I got the gold medal. So that enabled me to choose the Royal Ballet School. And so instead of flying back to Australia the next day, the director of the Royal Ballet School said, fly to London tomorrow. You'll just start tomorrow. And that was it. I just turned 17. And I suddenly found myself in London on the other side of the world with no family. I didn't know a single soul. I'd never been to Europe before. And yeah, that was a huge eye-opening experience. And it was also one of the most difficult moments of my life, to be honest. I struggled a lot. I felt like I was thrown in the deep end. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know anything about the profession. I didn't know how to look after myself. And I don't just mean like going to buy food. I mean physically and mentally. I didn't know how to cope with that scenario. How do you even process that scenario? Like, I should feel like I was on top of the world. I just won the most prestigious ballet competition on the planet and achieved my dream of joining the Royal Ballet School. But I was so homesick and out of touch and out of my comfort zone. I just didn't know anything about it. And my first day at the Royal Ballet School, I was sent across to the Royal Ballet Company to hold a tray of cups in the Sleeping Beauty. They use students as extras. And I found myself in these rehearsals with the most incredible people, like, Darcy Bustle and people like that. And I was watching these rehearsals of Sleeping Beauty, and that was genuinely the first time I'd really seen ballet properly close up. I'd only ever watched videos. So my first performance that I actually saw a full-length ballet, I was on the stage in it. So
wow.
It just this overwhelming situation. And then obviously joining the company as well. It was the most wonderful moment because I was surrounded by incredible artists that obviously motivated and inspired me. But I didn't have a clue what was going on. I didn't know anything. The casting would go up for a ballet, and a ballet called Symphonic Variations. The casting went up in my first season, and it's only 6 dancers, usually principals or first soloists. And the ballet was created. I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but it's, during the war, I think, or something like that. And don't quote me on that. I've lost the date. And anyway, the casting went up in my first season, and my name was down to learn the ballet, not to perform it, but as an understudy. And people went crazy. Oh my God, this is huge. Wow. Oh my goodness. Like, congratulations. And I didn't have a clue what was going on. I'd never heard of the ballet. I didn't understand the ballet. I didn't know what it was. And then it was 2 days before the opening night of this. And unfortunately, one of the dancers got injured. And so I was thrown on, and I did the opening night alongside, some of the greatest dancers that have ever stepped on that stage. And I had no idea what I was doing. I literally just stood on that stage and just did as I was told. And then when the curtain come down and people were talking to me, I started to understand a little bit more about this ballet that was so highly acclaimed and held such a place in the company's heritage. And I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know how to deal with what I'd just done. I didn't know how to react to that, or how do you even process a situation like that? And so I think my focus on trying to help the next generation is not just educating them about the ballets, because it's more than that, but it's helping them to deal with, the mental health side of things, the physical side of things, the pressures of always trying to please everybody around you and appear to be unfazed by anything. And I'm ready for anything. And if they say, can you do this? And you go, of course I can do it. Yeah, I can do it. But really, you're like, I have no idea. I can't do this. And I'm terrified to do it. Or my body feels like it's going to break, but I have to do it. And it's all these pressures. And I just think I want to invest a lot of my time and energy into supporting the next generation so that, we talk about those scenarios. And try to remove some of the negative things that could genuinely be improved these days in terms of just getting the best out of people. Working like a horse 6 days a week is not the best way to get the best result. And so I really want to try and invest as much as I can into learning and developing ways so that the next generation benefit from that in some way.
And so that their minds are supported as much as their bodies as well.
Yeah, and it's different to being wrapped in cotton wool. I'm not saying that at all. It's dealing with the real high-end performance level of what they're all trying to achieve. Dancers can't peak every 4 years when they go to the Olympics. That doesn't exist in our world. You have to peak every night when 2,500 people have paid their hard-earned money to come and watch you, or, however hundreds of thousands of people that are watching you live in the cinema because it's being relayed that night. Each night is that audience member's Olympics in their eyes, because they might only go to the theater once every 4 years, or, they might only go once in a lifetime. And it's their right to see a wonderful performance. So that's a lot to deal with as a dancer.
Yeah, that's a huge amount of pressure that I don't think most of us listening couldn't even begin to understand.
I mean, of course, you have to have perspective on it. Of course, I'm not opening somebody's brain and doing life-saving surgery, but it's all relative at the time. It's if you're the one stood in an empty stage and your Achilles snaps in front of 2,500 people, that's a very real moment where it's a career-threatening injury, and that happens in front of public. So that's a huge thing to live through and to obviously then come back from, which I'm grateful that I have support around me and enough mental strength to push through that, but not everybody will. So I think it's important for us all to keep working on things so that every generation improves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Tell me, Stephen, what's not a priority for you?
It's so hard just not to be political. Yeah, I think just all this borders and things like this, it just is something that infuriates me. And we're all humans and we're all exactly the same. So I think, closing borders and separating ourselves from the rest of the world is seriously not a priority of mine.
That's a brilliant priority, non-priority to have. I'm with you 100%. Unprioritize, deprioritize the borders. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And finally, what would you like to prioritize more?
I
mean, you sound like you got it pretty well balanced.
No, I don't think anyone does. But I think just encouraging more of the world just to be open with their minds. I would love people to just keep opening their minds to things across the world. And for example, if a boy down the road from you, if you find out that he dances, great, that's the end of the discussion. It shouldn't go any further than that. It shouldn't turn into a bullying scenario. If a girl down the road is really good at football, great, the end. That's it. She shouldn't then have a hard time for doing that. And I think it's just a case of, again, everybody opening their minds and also everybody in their professions reaching out beyond their small bubbles. So, I'm trying so hard to share, my passion of dance, but also the world of dance. So it's the good and the bad, the injuries and all that sort of stuff. I'm trying to share that with a bigger audience, not to throw it in their faces and say, you will love dance or you will love ballet, but it's just to have some little understanding of what that world entails and remove all, ridiculous stigmas around each profession, to be honest, that, we're all guilty of it. We all think, oh, so-and-so is this profession. Oh, they must be like this. And it's just so wrong. I would love that to to ease in the world and just, again, focus on what you're doing. Stop obsessing with what everyone else is doing. And I think everybody will be much happier.
I completely agree with you. All right, Stephen, thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to seeing you once you're back on stage.
Thank you. I can't wait to get out there again.
We'll all be looking out for it. Take care. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode of Priorities, I'd really appreciate it if you could make it your priority today to hit subscribe and also rate and review, as this helps other people find it. Need a little incentive? Every month, I offer one free 60-minute online coaching session to a listener. All you have to do is hit subscribe, rate, review the podcast, and then email a screenshot of your review to prioritiespodcast@gmail.com. You'll then be added into the ballot for a free one-to-one coaching session with me, in which we will help align the priorities of your life. Thank you so much for listening, and take care.